Okay, good to have you with us today. I'm one of the founders at VC-backed CYBERA, where we work with crypto exchanges, law enforcement, and nonprofits, as you know, to support victims of scams. You have been, unfortunately, one of these victims of a scam, and so really appreciate you taking the time to share your story here and help other users in the crypto ecosystem to not ideally fall for such scams. So can you tell us a quick summary of what happened to you and when did you realize that you were scammed?
Hi, Claudio. Sure, absolutely. And thanks also for the great work that CYBERA is doing to help victims like myself in resolving issues in these scam situations. I became aware of an Ethereum mining app back in the spring of 2022, and it was sort of a typical story. I put a small amount in and saw some realizable profits, and then added more funds into it to further see profit growth. When I tried to withdraw them is when it became problematic. Even though I was able to do withdrawals at the early stage, sort of a standard pig butchering approach. And then things got a little goofy in September of 2022, just before the Ethereum merge. There was a requirement to make a tax payment on the profits, which did at the time seem odd because, of course, why would you be making a tax payment to an app instead of making that payment to the IRS at the time that you file your taxes? Anyway, they said that the profits can't be and the funds can't be released until the tax payment is made, and it needs to be done in advance of the merge. So I made that tax payment, but the funds were not released, and the answers from customer service and the people handling the tax filings were vague, to put it mildly, with respect to the sort of timing issues that were part of it. Then post-merge, while there was still an increase in profits made in the account, there was a requirement to make yet another tax payment to cover the additional profits that were made at that point. So this took me to about November, and late October, early November. And so I made that second tax payment cautiously, hoping that this would be the end of what had been several months of trying to extract my funds from this app. The funds were returned to my wallet in their entirety for all of 36 seconds. And then the smart contract withdrew them promptly from my wallet, and they were put into a different wallet, a wallet that was different than the deposit wallet that had been used all along with the app. So it was at that point that I contacted CYBERA and filed an IC3 report and contacted the Cyber Fraud Task Force, which of course is a joint venture between the FBI and the United States Secret Service.
Thanks. That's very interesting, and as well showing the buildup of such a scam over time, right? So what's the entire time period? You mentioned some dates, but how long ago did this start? And until you realized there's something wrong with this? Was it several months?
Yeah, I think the first indication was probably a couple of months in, when I was pulled into an airdrop, and there wasn't really a way out of that. It was cautionary at that time. I wasn't talking about a lot of money, but it was just like, okay, this is going in a direction that's going to make it harder for me to extract the funds. So how far is it going to go?
Well, did the customer support people play their role? Like, how credible was it? Or because you mentioned red flags, and in terms of trying to prevent something like this happening to someone else, where could you have been more alert, or what could have been done better in that sense to prevent that from happening?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to what I would consider to be individual knowledge of crypto, like my particular knowledge of crypto. And I think at the time, any savvy and well-trained customer service people could run circles around me. But I dug in and learned a heck of a lot so that I understood what was going on. And truthfully, when it came down to the tax payments, there were flags there simply because, you know, I'm a business owner. I know how taxes are handled, and I was able to ask a lot of very pointed questions.
And so, yeah, so you mentioned, you know, once you realized that, you know, you're part of that scam, you took action, you contacted law enforcement, you got referred to us. How has this process been, and you know, how could it be improved? I mean, I'm sure, you know, there's a lot of things to be improved there on how we support victims of scams already in the prevention, in the education, because again, yeah, you're very knowledgeable. So yeah, I imagine someone who's less knowledgeable is even more vulnerable. But if you could give an advice or something you'd like to see happening, is there something you want to share, you know, at the direction of law enforcement or even crypto exchanges that would help with what you're going through?
Sure, I'll segment that to a couple of points if I can. I mean, as I complimented you and Nicola at the beginning, the CYBERA team was great. They were super responsive, and I had an asset tracing report within a few days. Unfortunately for me, it sort of fell over the holiday period of, you know, late November to really into January, which meant that, you know, activity with law enforcement was going to be slow. I did get in touch with, I did file an IC3 report, which is something that people should do because that's ultimately the thing that gets pushed to the Cyber Fraud Task Force or the FBI or United States Secret Service. That's a kind of initial thing that has to be done before even contacting law enforcement. CYBERA was really kind of the first step in getting things going because the asset tracing report showed wallet activity that had exits at 3 potential exchanges. And having that information allowed not just the CYBERA team to go to the exchanges and validate the attachment, but also allowed me to be able to go, look, here's credible information for law enforcement, and I was able to basically gift them the research that CYBERA had done on my behalf. So it gave them probably a lead on where things needed to go, and they could step in at that point and do something and move forward with it if they wanted to. But where it's a challenge is they're dealing with a lot of cases in law enforcement. I think the work that Erin West is doing with the React Task Force in California is awesome because she is in between the federal law enforcement and local law enforcement and victims, and trying to work to triangulate and get things moving forward, because the last thing anybody wants is for this to be stuck. I mean, the assets can be traced, but time is not, losing time is not a help to anybody who's in a similar situation, the situation that I'm in.
Absolutely. No, that's, very much confirm what you're saying. And it's definitely all about, first of all, bringing more power or equipped victims with, giving them something to work with, right? Like a report, like an exit point. So we know where to start. And then, as you mentioned, collaboration is key. Connecting the victim, and making sure that the right information is traveling to the exchanges. And as we discussed as well earlier before that call, involving law enforcement in the whole process. So yeah, is there anything?
So my advice for the various parties involved would be, for the exchanges, they can really only be reactive. Of course, the KYC initiative the Know Your Customer initiative is helpful. And a lot has happened even in 2022 to to move the KYC initiatives ahead, whether it's any of the exchanges ultimately to assist in having a better handle on who the customers are. So that's super positive. But being reactive isn't that helpful. Being responsive is better. Coinbase, in particular, has flagged this site, which was great, but that didn't happen until November. So I'm going to presume that there are other people who were miners, like myself, who were drawn into this and have lost funds. But we don't really know the scale or the extent to which funds were lost through this or any other similar mining application. I think that the tracers, people like CYBERA, should be able to knock on the doors of the exchanges, and they should be immediately given attention. I think that's really key, and it seems to be the case. But I think it's really important for all the exchanges to be proactive with that. And I think that I'm seeing more investigation assets inside the exchanges now, more compliance assets inside the exchanges, more people, working in anti-money laundering initiatives inside the exchanges now. And so that's probably a positive thing that happened, a positive development that happened in 2022. For crypto investors, I would just stay off any site that appears to be recent. Use Whois to look up the site history. I mean, I did that, but it was relatively new. And even though there are going to be new sites out there, just be cautious. I mean, don't jump on something because it looks like a great opportunity. Give it some time to be a live site. And if it's immature, if it's got obvious coding flaws, and I've seen a bunch of those, I avoid them all. I mean, they're just not things that you want to go near at any point in time anyway, because it's just, safe browsing ultimately. I suppose a couple of other housekeeping things. I mean, obviously people know that it's wiser to keep your coin in a wallet, not an exchange. And, one of the things that I learned is I'll avoid anything that has a smart contract. I just won't go near anything that has a smart contract ever again. And the reason for that is they can be hacked. You have no control over funds being withdrawn out of your wallet as a result of smart contract involvement. If you have to work with a site that has a smart contract, then use a wallet that has the ability to place limits on smart contract withdrawals.
Great. That's a lot of very insightful and practical advice. John, so thank you very much for sharing that all with us, sharing your experience. And we'll keep trying to do our best here at CYBERA and working with the crypto ecosystem to support victims, but as well to strengthen these collaborations with exchanges, with law enforcement to hopefully ultimately make the entire ecosystem safer for everyone to use. So very much appreciate you sharing all these insights, and we'll talk very soon.
Thank you, Claudio.
Thanks, John. Bye-bye.